This episode is brought to you by Farmers Insurance.
The United States is named as the main initiator of anti-Russian policy. The new foreign policy concept assumes an absolute rejection of neo-colonial practices and hegemonism.
Moscow lays out its new foreign policy priorities, branding Western actions against Russia a hybrid war. Foreign Minister Lavrov adds the country won't isolate itself and is ready for dialogue in a new multipolar reality. Saudi Arabia agrees to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a dialogue partner. The move comes amid a recent strengthening of ties between Beijing and Riyadh. And Joe Biden rejects the Wall Street Journal's plea to expel Russian diplomats and journalists from the U.S. in response to the arrest of the outlet's reporter on charges of espionage for Washington. Eight o'clock here.
Some things just make you feel more alive than others. Like the rush of adrenaline from an SUV that roars from 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Jaguar delivers that thrill every day. The F-Pace, how Jaguar makes an SUV.
Will Turkey ratify Sweden's NATO membership? Stockholm says it can't fulfill all Ankara's demands. As the bloc's membership requires unanimous approval, what would make Turkey change its mind? And what does all of this mean for NATO's future? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. One of the many fallouts of Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been that previously neutral Nordic countries
All right, so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low seating. First time you turn the wheel on this thing is the fast steering ratio that this has, which isn't something that usually stands out in any other vehicles, but in this thing, it has a 12-to-1 steering ratio, which I think has got to be by far the quickest in the industry, at least as far as this compared to its competitors goes. And so what that means is that it just takes a lot. Actually, when I first got in this vehicle and started driving for the first time, I had to recalibrate my steering inputs compared to anything else that I'm usually in, where you usually can, move your hands about the same amount and it'll do the same amount of steering. And this, I was like, no, I gotta slow my movements down because this thing is really dirty if you turn it as much as you turn your hands with any other steering setup. And so it just gives the whole vehicle an eager and a sportier feel, and it just feels like it wants to do what you want it to do just that much more aggressively. And it's not overkill. It's certainly easy to still be smooth with, and you just have to get used to it. And it happens very quickly to even get used to it. But it really stands out to me, and I still love that about the Stelvio. It's just so fun to have this fast steering. Other things here, though, that are really impressive is the ride. On these massive 21-inch wheels, I looked at this thing when it showed up in my driveway, and I was like, oh boy, it's going to be a rough ride this week. And no, it wasn't. I'm really surprised. Now, you do get with the Estrema here the adaptive dampers along with the rear limited slip differential. Those are two of the unique things here for the Estrema this year. The Veloce doesn't get the rear LSD anymore. It did get it last year, but now you have to go for the Estrema to get that. Previously, you could get those two things in other sport package vehicles in the past, but they've eliminated a lot. And I'm going to turn down onto this back road and see how it does. Here we go. Alright, so a little bit of turbo lag still before it kicks in and goes nuts, and then it flies. And it's hilarious. This is the second time I've done it where I go full throttle and then it tells me my washer fluid is low. Only little gremlin I've had all week though. It could actually be that the washer fluid is low and that just causes it to trigger that. I don't know. But I also also love how you get a nice little growl out of this engine. It really sounds nice for a 4-cylinder, at least in my opinion. But anyway, it's the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that Alfa's been using all throughout the Stelvio's life here, and it does 280 horsepower and 306 pound-feet of torque, which still does punch above its weight class typically. You know, most of the others in this segment, you know, might be able to match it almost on horsepower, but as far as the torque goes, I don't think any of them still crest over 300 pound-feet of torque like this does. And as a result, this is going to feel a little punchier than most of those others out there. And I believe that Motor Trend got a 5.4 seconds 0 to 60 in their testing with the Stelvios here. And so, I mean, it really feels nice and quick. I think the only thing about the engine I don't love is that it really wants to shift pretty early. It looks like the red line is indicated around, you know, 5,500 or 6,000. So not a lot to play with there. Even the average turbo 4-cylinder these days will rev to 6,500. So it's just, obviously with this 8-speed automatic you have, it's a ZF 8-speed, really reacts very quickly. And so, you know, you don't have to worry about at least, you know, waiting around for a shift or, you know, having that bog down the experience. But I just wish there was a little more breadth to the, you know, rev range here in the Stelvio. But I'm going to try out some manual shifts here to demonstrate this 8-speed auto here. So we'll go down to first. And here we go. Yeah, they're right there. You got these glorious paddle shifters to use that are so fun to use. But yeah, I think the manual shifts are great. It's definitely one of the best out there. I think BMW also uses the ZF 8-speed and, you know, maybe 1 or 2 others, but it's really a fantastic transmission. It does everything you want it to do, and I love it. But anyway, coming up some corners here, again, still in dynamic mode. Let's see how the Stelvio Extrema handles. And this is one of the best things about the Stelvio, is it is one of the best handling, if not the best handling in its segment, at least as far as the non-performance variants in its segment is concerned. I mean, it just, again, that quick steering really pitches it in aggressively, but then it sticks thanks to these 255 wide tires here on the Extrema version especially, and a rear limited slip diff that really puts the power down really well coming out of corners. And it just all makes this thing feel so alive and so competent too. And this is one of the few vehicles where it like eggs you on. It wants you to go faster. And I found myself over the week driving a little faster than I usually do. Even though, I mean, this isn't like, you know, some hot rod with, you know, 280 horsepower, but just the handling encourages you because it has such high limits that you're not even used to in this segment. So you really appreciate just how much this thing is willing to just play around with you, and it is just, it's so impressive. And I just, yeah, I love how this thing handles. And I will say that sometimes, you know, if I was going around, you know, an on-ramp at, you know, some elevated speed, the tires do tend to go towards the understeer side of things as you approach their limits, which is very safe. And so, you know, this never feels like it's too edgy or anything. It just does everything you want it to do. But I will certainly say that if I was driving one of these, I would probably upgrade to some performance all-season tires instead of these Continental all-seasons, which don't seem to be overly sporty. You know, so a little more grip up front would be maybe appreciated if you're really going to try and wring this thing out. But, you know, and 99% of, you know, average daily driving, you know, it's going to be way head and shoulders above all the other competitors as far as its handling threshold and, you know, what it can do and what it makes you feel like you can do as well, because it's just, you can just slice and dice up a back road, you know, no sweat, and it's fun, and, you know, you're barely even moving your arms because of the fast steering rack. And so I absolutely love these. I've loved them all 6 years that they've been around, but I just was reminded here this week of just how good this handles. And I've driven some of the other, you know, newer stuff these days, like the Genesis GV70. I love the GV70, but this, I mean, the GV70 can't touch the handling in this. This is still so much better, and it all just feels so good. It also helps with this, you know, kept the weight in check over the years too. These only weigh, like, I think it's 4,018 pounds. That also really helps some of the others, you know, getting a little heavier these days. Having this, you know, still be fairly light, and again, nice wide tires, the fast steering rack, it all just adds up. Plus the Alfa, you know, engineering expertise as far as, you know, they know how to make good handling vehicles, and so it all just adds up to just an absolutely amazing experience. And still, I don't think you can do better than the Stelvio if you like a good handling family crossover. And there's, you know, like the Acura RDX, I'm very impressed with that vehicle's handling as well. But I think this still is even above that. I think it's still an unbeatable proposition in this segment if you love good handling. Dynamic mode, by the way, also does give you quicker throttle response and also stiffer steering, so that gives you some extra weight here to the steering. And so that certainly does make it feel a little sportier as well. And I do like the dynamic mode, and especially if you use it with the manual shifters, then you don't have it constantly roaring at a higher engine speed. But if you do have it in automatic mode, it does really want to hang on to those lower gears. So it's not a kind of dynamic mode you can drive around in all the time, unless you really want to kill your fuel economy with high revs constantly. But if you use it with the paddle shifters, which is a ton of fun, then it's a really great experience all around. And we'll do one more acceleration here in the manual mode just for fun. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's a really good amount of power. It really is exhilarating, Again, it seems very ho-hum with, what everyone else is doing these days, aside from that torque being a little higher. But this thing really feels dynamic and exciting. I know, some others have wished that there had been a mid-grade trim between this and the Quadrifoglio that has more power, and Alfa never provided us with that here. Yes, it'd be nice to see something with 350 or 400 horsepower or something, but you can't always go to the Quadrifoglio version if you have the disposable funds for that. Those are fantastic as well. I drove one of those several years ago, and that really makes the experience that much better because you have a fantastic engine, plus even more extreme handling and all that. But for the average Stelvio here, these things are still just so much fun. And I also love that these paddle shifters are mounted to the steering column, which is getting rarer and rarer these days. But it's really a shame because I love how they're mounted to the column, because on mid-corner I always know where the paddles are at, and I know where I can grab them and have that shift. And also, since they're so massive, even if my hands are on a different position as a wheel or something, I always can just grab one part of the paddle and have that shift right there, waiting for me. And so it's just it's so set up. This is still hands down the driver's pick in the compact luxury SUV segment, no doubt about it in my mind. And it's also pretty quiet and refined in here too. Now, I don't think it's the quietest in its segment or anything, but this road is a little bit on the rougher side here, as you can see. It does generate some extra road noise, but still, I'd say it's totally acceptable, especially for an entry-level luxury vehicle like this. And so, yeah, overall, I think it's, really nice daily drive. All week, it's been very predictable, very easy to use. I think they might have improved, the programming of that over the years as well, because I have no complaints as far as the braking goes. It's still very easy to be smooth. I did have trouble being smooth with the Giulia way back when, but with this week, I've had no problems being smooth. So I think they've really cleaned up the brake application here in these later model years, and it's been totally fine. I love the way the brakes feel, honestly. And also, while we're out on the highway here, just merging onto the highway now, I'm going to talk about the safety tech briefly. It's not, crazy high tech or anything. It's just your basics, but you do have now, as standard for the 2023 model year, you have standard blind spot monitoring, you have automatic emergency braking, and also adaptive cruise control is now standard. Previously with Alphas, you would get various packages in order to have different levels of safety tech. Now it's all standard across the board. And that is very nice to have. The adaptive cruise worked fine all week, no problems with that. I just like driving this myself anyway, so it didn't even bother. So setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice look to take in right off the bat. First off, though, I think is the clutch and the throttle response. So you have immediate throttle response. Like, it is so quick to ramp up. I mean, you just lean on the gas a tiny bit and it's immediately like flinging you up to 3,000 RPMs. So clutch engagement, if you first are starting off on one of these, is going to be a little tricky. But once you get used to it, it's okay. It's just you have to relearn your muscle memory, because any other clutch and throttle, it's going to be a lot more relaxed. And so with this, you just have to immediately lift off the clutch, basically, because those RPMs are going to jump so fast. Even if you feel like you're dumping the clutch, you probably aren't. So that takes a little getting used to. Other things here, steering is actually really heavy. I think part of that's because of the wider track and the wider wheels and stuff, but I mean, it's so heavy, in fact, that at times it almost feels like you don't have power steering. It's not quite that bad, but it's not far off. But it gives you tons of steering feel as a result, and feels great. Also, you have insane visibility in all these WRXs and STIs. You know, massive windshield, huge side windows, great view out of the back. Even that rear spoiler doesn't really impede your vision a whole lot. I'm going to turn onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Waiting for the turbo. Ooh, then it takes off. And it flies. Oh man, this thing, it rips. Oh, that's fun. So the S209 here runs the same EJ25, displacement 2.5 liter turbo flat 4 engine as before, but it has been completely gone through. So they did all kinds of changes to it where they reinforced the internals of it. It also has a bigger HKS turbo. We're also running over 2.5 more PSI of boost, now 18.9 PSI total, and they did all the stuff you can do to pump up an engine basically. So they also added like a high flow air intake system. It also has a bigger fuel pump, bigger injectors, all those types of things they went through. Obviously a new tune and everything. You also have higher flow mufflers as well. So all that combines to give you a full grand total power output of 341 horsepower, 330 pound-feet of torque. And Subaru claims a 0 to 60 time of less than 5 seconds. That's about the same as a standard STI, so nothing remarkable there. But it's pretty punchy. They did say they improved mid-range torque as well, and so now they say that you get peak torque at 3,600 RPM. So 3,600 RPM is still really high, especially for a turbocharged vehicle. But that's they say it improves corner exit speeds and stuff like that. Another thing you might notice is partially, I think there's less sound deadening in the S209, or at least it seems that way to me. But that combined with these stickier tires, you hear every little pebble and every little road imperfection and just gravel and everything. You hear all that stuff way more. I'm also hearing gear whine. I'm hearing like power steering pump. Like, you hear all kinds of things in this vehicle. It's a very visceral and raw experience, which is very, very interesting. So you have so much to take in, and it's really sensory overload. Aside from the fact you don't have much sound, unfortunately, out of those higher flow mufflers. It might be a little more sound than before, but not a ton. But anyway, we're cutting up some corners here and see how this thing handles. It is so flat. It is insanely flat, and it feels so light and darty. It is just crazy. I mean, it's so easy to go around these corners. Like, I would have to go at such high illegal speeds to even challenge this car on this road. I mean, it is just so much grip from these 265 wide tires. It's flinging all my camera gear there in the back. So they're these Dunlop SP Sport Max tires, similar to the tires you see on Nissan GTRs and stuff like that. Very grippy tires, also very expensive. They're about $350 a pop at this size and stuff. So and so they're very grippy. They probably don't have a lot of life either, as far as durability goes. But man, they have tons of grip and very impressive. Also, that 0.6-inch wider track helps. This thing just feels so, man, it is just effortless. It is so effortless. Definitely the best four-door car I've ever taken down this back road. Probably the best handling four-door car I think I've experienced. I mean, even stuff like the Alfa Romeo Giulia and stuff, which I consider to be benchmarks as far as sedans go, this blows them out of the water and embarrasses most sports cars as well, just with how much grip and how flat. There's no body roll, there's no lean. A part of that is also because these are pretty light still. These weigh 3,485 pounds for a big four-door vehicle like this. That's pretty impressive numbers still. And so yeah, but this thing is just, it is just so impressive. So, like how they went through everything with the engine, they went through basically everything in the suspension. You have specially tuned Bilstein dampers, you have reinforcements for sub bracings and cross members. They also have a rear sway bar that's thicker, I think it's 20 millimeters. You also have stiffer springs and all these types of enhancements to make this thing so planted and be really good on track too. You know, you also have Brembos that are beefed up to handle the better track, you know, performance that's expected out of this vehicle. So there are 6-piston Brembos up front, 2 in the rear. You know, there's drilled rotors as well, and so they look very nice in addition to performing great. And so yeah, it's definitely such a good handler. It's a vehicle you really would have to track, I think, to fully appreciate. But even just going around, you know, your first couple of corners, the first time you hop in one of these things, you will notice it is so impressive and so special and different from everything else you've probably taken around a corner. I also do have to add, so I did a quick drive video on, I think, this identical vehicle just a couple of months ago, and back then the acceleration wasn't as impressive, but with that I kept starting from a higher speed. And I think, you know, the real magic of the STI is starting from 0 or at a very low RPM, because, you know, you do still have a little over 6,500 RPMs to play with here, but it still feels like a fairly narrow power band, since the first 3,000 RPMs or so don't give you much, and so it is pretty narrow, but you are shifting a lot and stuff, so it's a very active vehicle from a driver involvement standpoint, which I enjoy, but it's just, I think it's also a little bit cooler now than it was a couple months back, so I think that might have helped to perk this up a little bit as well. But yeah, it feels good, and I miss those whooshy Subaru sounds from these turbos, and the Boxer Rumble. Again, this might be you know, the last chance we get at this Boxer Rumble, because there's rumors of the next gen ditching the EJ. Well, let's go for another acceleration here, shall we? Yeah, this thing, the other enhancements you have here, it's really surprising me. So you have a close ratio 6-speed manual, and the gears definitely seem closer together than even STIs traditionally have pretty short gearing to help them give it a little more of a dramatic acceleration experience. This seems even closer. The shifter, by the way, feels fantastic. It's so precise, very quick shifts, even though it's a long throw here. It's very snappy, so you're not moving this long shifter very far. And so it's just, everything is so laser sharp and so dialed in. Everything, there's no play in anything. Like, driving this vehicle and driving, you know, with how sharp the throttle is and how sharp the shifter is and how sharp the braking and everything is, basically any other car is just gonna feel sloppy after this. Like, it is just that sharp. It is, man, this thing could be a missile around the track. And even just on a back road, it is thrilling, and it feels special. I think they made some really big changes, again, to widen out the whole vehicle just for this special edition, and to give it such wide tires. All these things, it's also super easy to rev match your downshifts. You literally just stab the gas very briefly, and because of how sharp this throttle is, it immediately jumps up. So, I mean, you don't even have to think about rev matching. And if you're not perfect at rev matching, you know, just me getting in this vehicle for the first time, rev matching is a no-brainer. So easy to do here. The grip, and just, I'm really glad we also have, of course, the all-wheel drive system that Subaru is famous for here in the STI, and so that puts all the power down very, very well, and gives you a very short-footed feeling. And yeah, I can feel around 3,500 RPMs. It has a lot of punch, but yeah, these are tight corners, guys, too. And this thing, it just tackles them so easily. I am just blown away, and you know, I'm blown away now in this back road. Even the first time I went around a corner, once Subaru dropped this vehicle off, it was just like wow, like it blew me away. The first time I went around a tight corner, like, wow, this thing can handle. Like, it is so flat and insane. I want to say it's the best handling vehicle I've driven all year. It is truly remarkable, and you know, again, it's been a little while since I've done an STI. They've always been, you know, pretty good handling vehicles, the STIs, but this just takes it up a whole other level, I think. And I really hope they incorporate some of these changes into the next-gen standard STI, because having all this goodness reserved for only 209 lucky buyers seems like a shame, especially considering this is so expensive. You know, these are just under $65,000 for this very rare limited edition. It's just so mind-blowing that I really hope that other people get to enjoy this and try this out, you know, with these enhancements hopefully trickling down in the future. But man, oh man, this thing. it's addictive actually. And you know, I will say, the past few years, the STI has kind of been, I guess, dying on the vine a little bit. They just had special editions that haven't really added a whole lot new to it. And this is really a massive change. I mean, to have the massive bump in power now, to have, the massive bump in handling, in every performance metric, this thing is way better. This is the enhancement I've been looking for from the STI its entire generation. And now we finally have it. Like I said, it's such a shame they're only doing 209 of these. It's so good. But hopefully, like I said, they work some of this stuff into the next gen. Other things to note here, though, just cruising around, you have this very firm suspension, and so from a daily driving standpoint, especially here in Pittsburgh where we have plenty of potholes, it can be a little rough. And I don't know if I want to live with it every day, because it is a very bouncy ride as well. Not race car stiff, but again, not super far off. And so, that is one thing that it's definitely a vehicle you have to be committed to. And just an off-the-cuff comparison very briefly. Again, been a couple of years since I've driven a Civic Type R, but I think Civic Type R is a little, more street-friendly, a little softer. This really is going for the track. Like, that's this thing's mission. That or the autocross course. Autocrossing in this thing would be, amazingly good as well, I think. But yeah, so a little bit of a firm ride, and that's exaggerated by these firm seats still. So aside from those comfort things, I'm enjoying the driving experience so much though that I don't think I'm going to mind. But thanks to Subaru, I am going to have this S209 here for an entire week. So I'm going to drive around all week, and then I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world fuel economy, as well as my impressions of what it's like to live with the S209 and anything else that I notice here during my week. Alright, so I've been driving the S209 here for a week now, and it's been a lot of fun. So because of the weather here, I was filming this here in December, and it's a little bit too cold to drive on these summer tires some of the days, so I didn't get to put as many miles on this as I would have liked to, but I still managed to put about 80 miles on it here in my time of driving it, and it's such a fun vehicle. I mean, there's definitely some drawbacks. The stiff ride is certainly one of them. It is sporty. The seats are still pretty stiff. Now, they're not unbearably so, and as a short distance vehicle, driving, commuting around, running errands like I was doing, things like that, it's fantastic. It's fine. It's so much fun just to zip around and run your errands in. It's really just so sharp. Everything is just so precise. But it's not a car. I don't think I'd want to take this on a road trip, because not only is the ride kind of stiff, but you have pretty short gearing, which is fantastic whenever you're performance oriented. But sixth gear on the highway, you still are cruising about, I think, 70 miles per hour. I think it was around 2,700 RPMs or 2,750. So you're a little high up there, on a vehicle that only has a red line of about 6,600 RPMs. And so just wouldn't be my pick for a road trip vehicle. That's really the only thing. But if you're not road tripping in this thing, I think it would be,
Pac-Man has been around for practically forever and will continue to live on through the years. This is because, although it is a simple concept, it is a solid formula for an always entertaining time. But things are mixed up and changed around to make a new experience with Pac-Man Championship Edition DX. It seems like insanity, changing Pac-Man? Because the original is still as fun today as the day it was released. The changes don't take away from anything, but rather create a game that could arguably be better than its legendary original. Now, I know TJ reviewed Championship Edition, but DX just adds so much more, such as new courses, visuals, and style. DX is as much a tribute to longtime fans as much as it takes the series forward into new heights. You again take control of the famous yellow pizza with one slice missing, navigating through mazes while eating pellets and avoiding ghosts. Now though, the goal is less about avoiding the ghosts as it is now about eating them in long combos. Apparently all the ghosts had a huge party the night before, and now the ghosts are very hungover and found a nice spot to relax and catch some sleep. But when Pac-Man runs past them, they come out of their stupor and remember their job and proceed to chase him. And after they start to chase, they know nothing else. They will follow you everywhere. It is fun to have a great long chain of ghosts mimicking your every move. The screen is broken into halves. After you eat all the dots on one side, a fruit will appear, refreshing the other side with more pellets and ghosts. So you go back and forth until you get a nice following of ghosts, setting up the opportunity for a long combo when you reach a power pellet. There is also random ghosts that make you change your course. It is a great way to change up the game, and it is really fun to figure out new ways of getting even longer combos. Another mix-up is the bombs. If you have no hope of escape, you can use a bomb that will send all the ghosts back to their gate. Also, there's the slowdown moments that are just awesome. If you get real close to a ghost, the game will slow down and give you a chance to think and escape. This is helpful. It starts off fast. It only gets faster the more you play, until you are hustling around the mazes. This makes things frantic and interesting. There are 3 main game modes. There is Score Attack, which is how high you can score within the given time limit, Pac-Man to the next generation.
We've been hearing since the 70s about the diminishing dollar, and it's going to be replaced. Yes, Saudi Arabia is tilting to deal more and
Alright, so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low seating position. You have a little bit of a higher seating position here for sure, to give you a little bit of a crossover feel. You know, you're sitting up a little higher than the average sedan. You have great visibility though. You have a nice large windshield, dashboard that drops down nice and low, and good view out of the sides here. Out of the back, you also have a camera rearview mirror here on the Premier trim, but otherwise, you know, I mean, it's still just a totally normal view out of the back. You don't have that. You also do have a 360 camera here on the Premier, which seems like overkill, honestly, for a vehicle this small, but it's nice to have, you know, if you're parallel parking, things like that, and a nice clear backup camera as well. But anyway, other things here, so just cruising on this park road at some low speeds, you know, it's nice and quiet. You know, obviously all you're going to hear basically is the climate control, and you hear a little bit of a whirring from the electric motor, or you know, that external speaker that's required so that pedestrians hear you coming. But you know, one interesting thing is, you know, you do have a 1-pedal mode here, and there's a nice button. It's very convenient. You know, it's not buried into a sub menu or anything. It's very easy to turn that off and on and give it a try if you like. I personally don't mind it. It's not too hard to get used to, but I kind of just prefer coasting. And so I just leave the 1-pedal thing off, but it is nice that it has it, and I'd say it's, you know, pretty well done if that's your thing. Other things though, you know, you have a nice responsive throttle. Of course, all EVs are pretty sharp, but this one especially is tuned to be nice and sharp. And you also have a sport mode, which will sharpen things up even more. Brakes also are nice and responsive. They bite right at the top of the pedal there. But I'm going to go ahead and put it into that sport mode here, and I'm going to turn down onto this back road and see how it does. Here we go. Okay. Nice and eager power building. It's not like other EVs where it like really throws you in the back of your seat. I mean, it does at higher speeds, but I think from a stop, it kind of wants to meter that power out a little bit. Although there were a few times earlier this week where it did just roast the tires, especially when you have the wheel turned a little bit and you floor it. I mean, it will just, you know, want to do a little front wheel burnout on you there. And you can turn off traction control if you want to just have it, you know, let everything spin. But anyway, so it just has a single electric motor up front there. It's front wheel drive only here for the Bullitt EVs. No all-wheel drive option or anything. But with the front motor there, it does 200 horsepower, 266 pound-feet of torque. It'll do a 6.8 seconds 0 to 60 time as well. So really, you know, quite punchy. And it's another area where you would think the most affordable EV in America would be slow, but it's not. It's quicker than the average family crossover out there on the American roads. And so, I mean, it's pretty nice and punchy, and especially, I mean, passing power and stuff is great, and especially here in sport mode, but it really does feel very zippy. And this road that we're on now usually generates a good bit of road noise here, and in this vehicle, you know, you hear the road noise a little bit, but honestly, there's other vehicles that are more expensive than this that I've had more road noise than I have in this, honestly. It's not bad. I'd say this is pretty refined, again, for the price point and how small it is and everything. And the fact, you know, they did try and keep the weight down. These are under 3,800 pounds, even with, you know, 65 kilowatt hour battery pack. So I'm honestly just pretty impressed that it's just as refined and quiet in here as it is. And we're coming up some corners here that I always take in my reviews, and let's just see how it handles. Obviously, this is not set up to be a sports car or anything, but just to see how it handles corners. Let's throw it in here, and it's actually pretty flat. There's a tiny bit of lean, but honestly it just feels really eager and darty, and it just feels really well controlled. And yeah, I just, you know, I don't think you have a ton of grips. That's the one thing, you know, is I push it, you know, I can feel the front end wanting to push a little bit. So, I mean, it's set up, you know, to understeer if you push it too much, and that's the very safe way to set these up, what you expect, especially out of a front-wheel drive, you know, family vehicle. But, you know, you do have 215 wide tires, so they're not super skinny or anything. It's just that they're Michelin Energy Saver tires, so nothing that's, you know, too grippy, but they are all seasons, and, you know, just do a good job here with, you know, putting the power down most of the time, again, as long as you're not, you know, driving in a sporty manner or anything. But I mean, even, you know, going around this corner at a little bit of an elevated pace, you know, it has no problem doing it. It really does feel just totally up to the job, and yeah, I have no complaints with the handling. I think it's totally fine, not only for this segment, but just in general. I think, you know, it's just a very nice handling vehicle, so very well done as far as that goes. And so I think part of that also just benefits from the fact this has a longer wheelbase than a regular Bolt. I think the regular Bolt should handle, you know, very well too. I haven't driven the newest generation of the regular Bolt, but with this one having a 2.9-inch longer wheelbase than the regular Bolt, should give you a more stable and planted ride as well. Otherwise, though, some things to note about the batteries. Like I said, it's a 65 kilowatt hour pack, and the one thing about the pack is, you know, you have 247 miles of range, which is great, but the problem is that it doesn't recharge very fast, and that's the one downfall here of the Bolt EV compared to most of its competitors. Most of those do charge at least a little bit faster. So this maxes out, I think I saw around 53 kilowatt as for the fastest charging speed you can get. And to put that in perspective, like a Mach-E, you know, Mustang, for example, will do about triple that, about 150 kilowatts is what they max out at. Most of the other stuff, even other competitors, will be, you know, closer to 100 kilowatts, like the Kona Electric and things like that. But all these modern EVs coming out are going to be doing 150, and even Chevy's own Equinox EV that's coming here towards the end of 2023 for the first ones, that is also going to charge 150 kilowatts. So, you know, 53 kilowatt charging, you know, is not quick, and it means that you're going to be spending over an hour at charge stations to get, you know, a good chunk of charge out of these things. And so, not a great road trip vehicle. I honestly just think you're better off probably getting something else if you are going to be doing a lot of fast charging. But the idea with most electric vehicles is that you don't do long road trips, at least not very regularly. You know, therefore just being, you know, commuting vehicles, going around town, things like that. And, you know, for that kind of stuff, 247 miles is plenty of range, and way more than all the other competitors offer. So it's kind of a trade-off. Some of the competitors charge a little faster, but with way less range. This has, you know, tons and tons of range, even more range than many of the more expensive vehicles like the Mach-E Mustang. You know, some of those, you know, don't even do 247 miles of range. So, you know, this has really top-notch range for the price and the segment and all that. It's just that charging is the one thing that's a little bit of a letdown. And merging onto the highway.
And let's check the speakerphone.
You even actually feel a little bit of torque steer just with all that power going through the front wheels. It's really fun, and I mean, even in the rain, you know, it'll definitely want to twitch around a little bit more on you as well. But it's punchy. Yeah, this thing really feels quick whenever you're merging on some higher highway speeds here. I mean, it doesn't run out of steam. Once you're, you know, at 65 miles an hour, it still will, you know, pull nice and strongly for you as well. But we're out on the highway here, so I'm going to put on the Super Cruise system, which is the one real big thing here about this vehicle that, you know, makes it, you know, really, really impressive. It's basically this, and again, the Ford that has the Blue Cruise, but these are the only two that actually do the hands-free thing. So I'm going to try this out here. Just turned on Super Cruise now. It's enabled, so I can do hands-free driving. It does have a monitoring device here to make sure that I'm looking at the road, but as long as you're looking at the road, it will do this on all the approved Super Cruise highways that they've mapped out with LiDAR in advance and uploaded those maps to the Bolt here. And so just cruising down the highway here, it does a really good job. Now, I did do a little bit of highway driving earlier in my week here with this vehicle, and it was a little shakier with the steering. It was very assertive, but it was just steering a lot, and it was ping-ponging a little more than I'm used to with Super Cruise, and all the other stuff that I've, okay, now it's saying it's disengaging for some reason. I don't know why. It didn't give me any warning. It just turned it off immediately. Sometimes Super Cruise in other vehicles will actually go blue first to let you know, hey, you're going to have to take over eventually. This doesn't seem to do much of that. It's just like immediately like, never mind, I'm bailing, and you gotta hurry up and throw your hands back on the wheel. So that was interesting. Let's see if we can turn it back on. Okay, it says unavailable right now. So there's a bunch of conditions that need to be met for Super Cruise to actually work. But whenever you don't have that, even with all the regular Premiers here, you do have an adaptive cruise control system. So even if you don't go all the way up to the Super Cruise for $2,200, the Premier trim here gives you the adaptive cruise, which of course will still slow down for traffic. It's just not hands-free. But this does also have like a lane keep assist system to help you out with that as well. And you have all the other usual safety tech as well. Blind spot monitoring, road cross traffic alert. That is I think a $500 option for those. So that's not standard on a base trim, but on these higher trims, the Premier, you do get that as well. But otherwise, out here on the highway, still a really nice cruiser, even whenever you can't do the hands-free thing. But one other thing I will say about the Super Cruise is that $2,200 is a lot of money to spend whenever you're in the budget-minded value shopping premise like you are with a Bolt EUV typically. And so I just $2,200 is a lot, especially if you're not going to be road tripping a ton. Yes, it is going to be nice to have Super Cruise for your drive home if you're doing 20 minutes on the highway or 30 minutes on the highway. And for some people that could totally be worth it, and that's totally fine if that's worth it to you. But the real appeal of Super Cruise is long highway drives where it really reduces the fatigue a lot more. And that's where I tested out Escalades and things like that, where it's really nice to have those long drives with the Super Cruise. But with this, you're not going to be doing a lot of long drives in these, but it still could be nice again, depending on your circumstances and all that. We'll try and turn it on one more time here. Okay, now it's back on and it works again. And so I don't know if you can see the steering wheel, but it does, even now, it's twitching back.
Do you know that it's impossible to drive a Supernova? They're just really impractical and hard to park. But it is possible to drive a Chevy Nova, like this one from Hot Wheels, the 1968 Chevy Nova SS with the 350 badging on the side. This Hot Wheels version has a light blue paint job, which looks nice on this car with the white racing stripes. It has black wheels, a white interior, and as you can see, this car has been jacked up a bit. It looks like it's ready to go drag racing, or maybe conquer a few volcanoes. Nova versus volcanoes. Who can say? That's a battle we'll have to play out one of these days. This is a muscular car for sure, the 68 Chevy Nova, and I found this Hot Wheels in a 20. American muscle cars can pull it off, especially when they've got some nice complementary racing stripes like this one. So if you're looking for a Chevy Nova that looks like it's ready to go into battle, sporting a light blue coat and some racing stripes, this is the one for you, the 68 Chevy Nova from Hot Wheels by Mattel. All the power of a supernova condensed into a little Chevy Nova. With a great name like Johnny Lightning, how can it be wrong? This is the 1984 Pontiac Firebird from Johnny Lightning with that awesome black paint job, and check out those gold wheels. Oh yeah, if only this car talked to itself and fought crime. But that's okay, you can talk to yourself and fight crime, because it would be a crime not to have a 1984 Pontiac Firebird. Just look at this thing. It looks like the real thing, but smaller, and that's why I like it. I also love this car in black, obviously. It kind of looks like Kit from Knight Rider. This has a beige interior, those things on the back window that melt the ice, and little Firebird symbols on the side, as well as those awesome wheels. And the hood opens to reveal the nuclear reactor, engine, in the front of the car. That way you can also play Knight Rider and just pretend like it's chomping bad guys like a giant alligator. Detail here, and that hood that opens revealing the engine. A big thanks to our longtime friend Steve from Ontario, Canada, for donating this car to the show. Yins know I always like a Pontiac Firebird. This is just a great looking vehicle, a lot of fun, highly recommended. The 1984 Pontiac Firebird from Johnny Lightning. From Steve. Ian's got a Pontiac Firebird in that. Cool.
Good day. Battlefield Vietnam was the second game in the Battlefield series, although it wasn't given a 2, so therefore it's considered a spin-off. Now, while Battlefield 1942 was the genre maker as a whole for Battlefield-style games, Vietnam was really a spin-off maker for all the various Vietnam spin-off games that we would come to see in later years. Now, this game uses an enhanced version of the Battlefield 1942 engine, and that means you've got slightly more enhanced gameplay and slightly better graphics. Really, the most notable aspect of this game is the soundtrack. You see, this uses a number of licensed songs from the 1960s. In fact, the game starts up with Fortunate Son, which is quite awesome to say the least. Now, the base gameplay is completely unchanged from 1942. Essentially, you capture control points in an attempt to make the enemy lose all of their tickets and thus lose the map. Now, the game has added a few new classes and has actually respec'd a few of the classes as well. The Heavy no longer is completely dependent upon a pistol, and instead actually gets a carbine, which is quite useful. You can also now set up a mortar, which is actually more useful than you might think, because it can actually be used for anti-tank purposes. The game introduces helicopters and jet planes as well. The helicopters are okay. They're a little wonky to control with the keyboard and mouse and really require a joystick. In fact, unless you actually have significant practice with them, you're just going to crash a lot. You have to practice, but still, they do go fast and the maps are quite small. Really, you know what I use them for? Helo drops. I fly straight up and then jump out, and then right before I hit the ground, activate the parachute. That was the same case in Battlefield 1942. Essentially, the parachute is magic. You can fall from 30,000 feet, and then when you're 10 feet before you hit the ground, activate the parachute and then just land safely. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but damn is it fun. Battlefield Vietnam has some fairly decent maps. Fairly decent. There's not many, and in fact, it has very few maps when compared to 1942, and they're not really all that varied. But many mods actually rectify this. Now, my personal favorite map in this game is Operation Flaming Dart, but I prefer the modded one called Operation Flaming Dart 2, which actually adds an aircraft carrier. Really, Battlefield Vietnam was a decent successor to 1942. It could have used a few more maps, and the maps themselves could have been enhanced a little bit. But overall, it was a decent package. And so, this is John, signing off.
This is Circuit Strike 1 for the iPod, and the fastest way to describe this game is that it's a mixture of Geometry Wars Evolved and those scenes in Ghost in the Shell where they're hacking things. On the surface, this video game looks and sounds really cool, but to be honest, I have some mixed opinions about it. I like this style, but I do not care for the controls. And you cannot see where you're shooting. They give you 3 different control schemes. One feels a lot like Asteroids, which doesn't work terribly well. The other is a pseudo Robotron 2084 control scheme, which is the one I'm using. And it does work after you get used to it, but not nearly as well as some other games like iDracula or Minigore. And then there's another control scheme which is like advanced, and I think you control it using your mind or something. I couldn't figure it out. The Robotron style controls usually work for me, but in this case it's very difficult to see where you're aiming. The laser is this dim blue light in a sea of chaos. You think they could have just made it really big and yellow. Beneath the layers of flashing, beeping, and blooping is a game that is very similar to Robotron 2084, with a bit of a Tron style. What you're doing initially is blowing up those red things, which are the shield generators, and then you destroy the data core, which is unlocked after you rid the level of the red things. There's smaller enemies flying around the screen shooting at you, and if you shake your iPod, time slows down briefly under control. I'll tell you this, there's no doubt that some people watching this review will love this game, but it is not a pick-up-and-play kind of average, casual gamer's game. Not by a long shot. I'll recommend Minigore for that. I got up to level 6 or 7 when I sat down and really tried to just get into the game. I think they got this style down for Circuit Strike 2. I'd like to see some refined controls and a much more visible laser beam.
Recognize the admission of Finland and Sweden to NATO, because we all know that, looking from an historical perspective, NATO members have brought their national issues to the...
The Toyota Supra, in its reborn GR Supra form, has been on the scene for just 3 years. But already it has cemented its place as a leader among the current crop of sporting coupes. For 2023, the long-rumored manual transmission has arrived, along with a few other updates that are sure to make its case even more solid. The Supra's new 6-speed comes from ZF, but has been heavily modified for the Supra and is only available with the 6-cylinder engine. That 3-liter inline-6 turbo is BMW sourced, of course, though output has increased from its initial 335 horsepower to 382 horsepower and 368 pound-feet of torque, or almost identical to the automatic-only BMW Z4. And as we found out at Savannah's Roebling Road Raceway, Toyota has done much more than just drop in a new manual transmission and call it a day. The double-joint McPherson strut front and multi-link rear suspensions have been retuned for all 23 Supras with upgraded shocks designed to further minimize roll without adversely affecting handling. Brembo-based brake hardware is the same as before, but the control system has been recalibrated. They had great initial bite and helped us well throughout our track days. Drive modes are easy to dial in and work with vehicle stability systems that have also been recalibrated. Plenty of chassis bracing is in place to tie it all together. The shifter itself is smooth to operate and clutch action feels just right, not too heavy or too light. Integrated electronics not only allow for automatic rev matching, but also manipulate clutch engagement to maximize torque delivery. All in all, we'd say the manual is exactly what the Supra needed, as it makes it more fun than before, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. There's an active rear differential that helps the Supra put power down quite effectively out of corners, with a 3:46 ratio that's higher than the automatic's 315. It not only provides a much torquier overall feel, but keeps the engine in its north of 5,000 RPM sweet spot more often. 275/55 Michelin Pilot Super Sports provide plenty of grip, perfect for minor amounts of controlled oversteer for rotating through corners. For ultra-tight, low-speed corners, there's new Hairpin Plus programming in the traction control that allows more wheel spin than before, plus the active rear shifts power to keep drive off strong instead of just inducing a bunch of power on oversteer. That upgraded rear partially helps negate the pause for shifting during straight-line acceleration runs, taking us just 0.2 longer to hit 60 than the automatic at 4.3 seconds. It's an easy manual car to launch consistently, as everything has plenty of feel, yet is not too abrupt or firm for daily use. With power delivery staying consistent throughout the quarter mile, which we finished in 12.8 seconds at 115 miles per hour. Some changes have taken place inside as the center and 12-speaker JBL premium audio. Nothing changes outside, with the exception of this new Stratosphere blue paint option. Same low-slung, swooping body panels as before, draped over 19-inch forged aluminum wheels with red Brembo brake calipers behind. We're glad they resisted the urge to throw on a bunch of gaudy graphic tacky add-ons. Really, the only thing to carp about is fuel economy. The hardware trade-off is significant. Government fuel economy ratings dropped from the automatics 23 city, 31 highway, and 26 combined to 19 city, 27 highway, and 21 combined. That's a worse than average energy impact score, using 14.2 barrels of oil yearly with CO2 emissions of 6.8 tons. Since the manual transmission is not available with the standard 2-liter engine, it's not the bargain option. But at least it won't cost you any more than the automatic, as both start at $54,095. Premium trim at $57,245. It almost seems odd to even say that such a simple thing as a step backwards in technology could have such a huge positive impact on the 2023 Toyota GR Supra. But it only takes one drop of truffle oil to inject some huge flavor into whatever it is you're cooking. And if you plan on cooking your way through a few track days, why not show up with the best ingredients possible for having a rip-roaring good time in the Toyota GR Supra?
More with the East. But that doesn't mean that we are going to all of a sudden
platform of the alliance whenever any particular topic came to the agenda.
Let's to thank one of our sponsors, Farmers Insurance.
I've seen this movie before.
You have?
Sure. This is the part where all is lost and the hero searches for hope. Then a mysterious figure reminds her that she has the Farmer's Home Policy Perk guaranteed replacement cost, and that her home will be rebuilt regardless of her limits or if the cost of materials has gone up.
That's really something.
Get a whole lot of something with Farmer's Policy Perks. Wait, I didn't ruin the ending, did I?
Yeah, you did.
We are farmers, bum 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 bum.